Hello everybody, I am Zenith, and welcome back to yet another episode of Diving Into DuckTales, where Y2 Staller, Kat Macberrie, and I discuss each individual episode of the new 2017 DuckTales series. Before I introduce my co-hosts, today is a little bit of a kind of an ending episode for us because we're talking about the latest episode that premiered around Halloween. However, there's not going to be any more episodes for a little while, unfortunately, because they're taking a little bit of break before the Christmas episode, and I'm not sure how long it's going to be before the next part of the season continues, because I did look this up, and there is going to be 21 episodes. Some of you mentioned this in the comments, but there is going to be 21 episodes, but the season is going to be taking a break. With that being said, I am joined once again by Kat Macberrie. How's it going, Kat?
Hello, everyone. It is nice to be back post Halloween. Sorry we didn't get this up beforehand, but stuff happened. But anyways, Halloween! Happy Halloween! Just wanted to say that now to everyone. Happy Halloween.
And also, in the XYZ dimension, we have YZ. No, sorry. Sorry, it's Y2 Staller. I was trying to make a pun with it, but your name is weird.
I'm in a three-dimensional plane beyond all existence. Well, at least you can chart me, I guess.
Yeah, you're you're at the triangular location that is in the center of the X, Y, and Z point on this graph I have right here. You can't see me holding it up, but it is here.
Zen learned to spell.
It looks very nice. I am excited to be talking about this episode because, let's be honest, the last couple of episodes we never really had like a true adventure episode, probably not since the second half of the Woohoo episode where they go to Atlantis. And I don't really count the House of the Lucky Gander because that was kind of like an adventure episode, but we didn't find out it was an adventure episode until like the third act. So this is like the first like real legit adventure episode of DuckTales since the second half of Woohoo. So this will be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, it finally feels like the original DuckTales.
So today we're going to be talking about the living mummies of toth-ra. And I'm kind of mixed about this episode. Full disclosure here, this is not one of my favorite episodes. I still don't think it's quite as weak as Terror of the Terra Firmians, but I'm really kind of torn about this episode. Again, not because I think it's bad, because on its own I think it's a decent episode, but I think there are definitely parts that work really well, and there are other parts that really don't work, and they're kind of at odds with each other. It's a very weirdly structured episode, and we're going to be talking about that today. But yeah, let's get into it. So today's episode is an adventure episode, like you stated, and it's about Uncle Scrooge and company infiltrating a pyramid. They're pretty much pulling an Indiana Jones. They're inside a pyramid, and they end up stumbling upon a lost civilization of people who have been living inside a pyramid for I'm not even sure how long, like years and years and years.
Thousands of years.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago in Sigourney Weaver.
No, stop that.
And during the infiltration of the pyramid, half of them get separated. So Webby and Louie get separated from the rest of the group. And there's two parts to this episode. One part I think really, really works, and that is the B-plot of the episode. The part that I think is a little bit is the A plot. But first, let's talk about the B plot. The B plot is about the rest of the cast. It's Launchpad, Huey, Dewey, and Uncle Scrooge interacting with these people who have been living underground in a pyramid their entire lives. They don't know about anything about the outside world, and they see new people for the first time. And so they explain that they have been servants of the mummy Toth-ra, and so they basically live to serve his will, and they're waiting for his resurrection to come to serve him if he ever were to return, which I think in general is a good premise, like a good start to a premise, because I like the idea of mummies. I think mummies need to be utilized more, and a lot of what they do with mummies in this episode is pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like a good mummy episode? It actually kind of like references back to the old show as well, especially the opening. You know, when in the opening when one mummy is chasing the nephews across the desert. I always think of that. Yeah, I mean, I like the premise. I mean, it's a tad cliche, but I still like it nonetheless. I will say though, I was kind of worried with the natives, because I will say this right now. One of the things that I really don't like about the old DuckTales that it kept happening and it was always uncomfortable, was that they were always coming across these natives who apparently had never come into contact with the outside world before, and they acted like stereotypical natives, like to the point where they spoke broken English and they had no clue about outside technology or other cultures. And like I said, it was really uncomfortable. I was glad to see that this civilization did not act like that at all. That, they actually were somewhat, intelligent. But they kind of took it to the opposite extreme, though. Because with the natives, they kind of talked in, modern day lingo. Like the first thing that one girl says is, "Yo, what up?" And I'm thinking, hold on. Why is someone who's been trapped in a pyramid for thousands of years talking like that? Where would they learn to talk like that?
Yeah. There are a couple inconsistent. There are a couple things that really don't work about the fact that they've been living underground for that long. The other thing I noticed in relation to that was they've been living underground their entire lives, but they're growing crops. Now, at first, I'm like, wait a second, how do you grow crops on the ground? They get about 10 seconds of sunlight from Ra every single day. You cannot grow crops like that. How are they alive? And granted, they're garbed like mummies, so I don't know, part of me wants to believe that they're actually undead creatures themselves, but it's just weird. I will say that I did like that Cree Summers voiced one of the main natives. Cree Summers, if you don't know, she voiced characters in Danny Phantom and quite a few other...
everything.
Pretty much everything.
She's been voices in everything. If you ever had a childhood, she voiced something in your childhood.
Yeah, pretty much anything from the 90s, like pretty much anything in the last 20 years or so, 20, 30 years. Pretty much she's done everything from Warner Brothers to Disney. She was all over the place.
And she's a great voice actress. I think she was enjoyable in the episodes. And I think overall, the natives were portrayed fine. Their whole thing is that they've been loyal to Toth-ra their entire lives, but they changed their way of thinking because Launchpad offers them a burrito. And it's something that they've never encountered before. They all eat burritos, and they're like, oh, where did you get such a thing? And they're like, oh, there's hundreds of burritos outside. There's thousands of burritos. You can get all the burritos you want. And a lot of the episode is them rising up against Toth-ra because Launchpad makes this gallant speech about burritos. And part of me wanted to say at that point, that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but it was also one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of a give or take situation. I think a lot of the premise, when it comes to them rising up against Toth-ra, their lord, and, you know, they're all of them are saying, like, you know, do it for the burritos, and I always love how Uncle Scrooge is just sitting there like, this is just dumb. He's looking at them, he's like, this is the dumbest uprising I've ever been a part of, and it's hilarious.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, Scrooge would be good at CinemaSins.
I don't know. Eric, what do you think about this whole uprising part of the plot?
I think it's fun. I just think it's funny, like, they're doing this for burritos. It's not just about burritos. It's about enchiladas and quesadillas and all sorts of stuff. All that. It's like not just for freedom, not just for sunlight, but for burritos. For the burritos. I think it's just silly, and it just comes up as a really good running gag, even to the point where, as part of their training, they learn how to wrap, like, Launchpad is showing them how to wrap giant burritos, and even Scrooge is like, this is so not gonna work.
At least it's not as dumb as Dewey teaching them how to do the Thriller dance. Like,
Hey, that was funny.
That was funny.
That was funny, but what was the point?
There was no point. So there's an entire montage of them teaching them skills to fight or act scary like mummies, or just, you know, do various different things. And I think that part of the plot is fun. I think what works about it is it's just silly enough to where I'm not entirely sold with it, but I'm having fun. There's a lot of good jokes with it. And then we get to the actual storming of the Temple of Toth-ra. Now, we have to go over into the A-plot to kind of explain what's happening, because a lot of this stuff happens at the same time. So, in the A-plot, we have Louie and Webby, and they're actually, they fall into the Forbidden Chamber of Toth-ra, and this is the entire reason why Uncle Scrooge wants to get in there, is he wants to rescue them from, you know, a place that is very dangerous, and, you know, he doesn't want them trapped there for all eternity, because no one's supposed to enter the Forbidden Chamber of Toth-ra. But inside, we find out that there's only a priest in there, and I think the first thing that I had a problem with was, this is where the episode started getting predictable. If you've seen any, like, 90s cartoon or, like, something like this, you start getting the idea that maybe the priest is really Toth-ra, and, yeah. The priest who's conducting all these ceremonies is basically using Toth-ra's body as a puppet to manipulate the rest of them and get all the food for himself. And it's very cliche, and it's something that has been done to death in many other cartoons. I thought this part was a little bit I don't know, Kat. What do you think about that?
I pretty much guessed it immediately, like as soon as they showed him rising up from the top of his temple and you see him shrouded in shadow, I'm like, yeah, he's not real. Like, or he's totally fake, or he's not who he says he is. It's totally not the real guy. And sure enough, we find out, yeah, like, it technically is him, but he's apparently dead or in a stasis of non-being or something. And yeah, it's not the priest, the guard, that's been, like, using him as a puppet the whole time. And, I mean, to be fair, he's not exactly hurting anybody. Because, I mean, yeah, he's kind of, like, acting in his spot, but it's not like he's working them to death or treating them cruelly or anything. He's kind of just keeping the status quo. So, but yeah, like pretty much at that point, I'm like, is anything interesting gonna happen? Are we just gonna go through the motions here? Really?
Yeah, it was kind of weird how they did it, and it's funny you say he's not really hurting anyone. I'm gonna bring back the food thing because I think it's kind of stupid in general how they don't really address how they get food. He gives them 10 seconds of sunlight. If he really wanted to be benevolent, he'd give them, how about a day of sunlight so he can utilize the crops or something like that. They don't seem very well fed, is what I'm saying.
I guess, but I mean, clearly they've developed the crops into some form that they can survive with limited sunlight and water. Because I mean, how else would they be able to thrive in that state for thousands of years?
I want to say there are plants that are like that in real life, where they, but I can't pinpoint exactly which ones, but I feel like that there is something like that exists. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I figured that's how they would be surviving. I mean, even with that limited amount of sunlight.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that those type of plants exist. I don't know exactly what type offhand, but I do know they exist. And clearly that they do have those plants, and clearly they managed to, garden them to a point that they can thrive enough to feed the entire village and allow them all to at least live to a certain degree. So, I mean, it's not like they were all skin and bones. It's not like they were literally mummies. So
that is true. So that's part of the A-plot. The other part of the A-plot is that throughout most of this, the priest is trying to kill Webby and Louie because, they pretend to be the servant of the god or something like this. And
Louie pretends to be a god.
Yeah, he pretends to be the god above toth-ra.
I am the god of gods. Bow before me. And Webby starts getting really angry at him for some reason. She's like, do you have to talk your way out of everything? Do you have to pull a Louie and just do this? And I'm just like, but that's helped them before. That's Louie. That's who he is. He's kind of he worships chaos. He's a con artist, but he always talks his way out of trouble. And that's a good trait in some instances, especially when they're about to be killed by a priest. And Webby ends up pulling a Louie herself, where they're tied up, they're about to be killed, and she's like, "You're not doing this right. Do you have the proper embalming rituals and this and that?" And he's like, "Oh, right, I don't." And she talks her way out of it and scolds him for trying to talk his way out of it. I'm like, "You just did it yourself."
I did like that part, by the way. If I'm going to be sacrificed, I want it to be done properly.
Yeah, she actually read up on that, and I did like that about Webby, but I think the whole moral there is kind of weird.
I think I know what they were going for, and I'm actually going to use an example from Game of Thrones to explain this. Because, like you said, being able to talk your way out of a situation is a good and very useful trait to have. It's important for survival in some cases. However, you also have to know how to talk your way out of certain situations with certain people. For instance, as I mentioned with Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister, he's the perfect example of someone who can easily talk his way out of any situation. And because he's so highly educated, he can easily apply himself to, easily talk his way out of anything. He could talk his way out of an agreement with a king or a lord or a educator, anyone. There was one scene where he goes face to face with this brute who's trying to beat the shit out of him, and of course he's trying to talk his way out of it, but of course the guy, he's just a big dumb brute. He doesn't understand all these big words Tyrion is trying to say. He's like, "Oh, I'm highborn, I have all this influence, and I can get you all this wealth and power." The guy doesn't understand what he's saying, and he gets angry as a result and keeps trying to beat the shit out of him, till finally he dumbs down his language and says, "Gold, gold, I have gold, I give you gold." And that's when the guy starts to understand and let up. So I think that's what they were trying to teach in this situation, because Louis is trying to make himself out to be this high benevolent god and make himself be above everybody, even though he doesn't know anything about the culture or the rituals or anything about the society and can't, play up the ruse. Whereas Webby, she knows about the culture, she can read the hieroglyphics and everything, and she can actually play into their theology and thus, manage to find their way out of the situation. So that's what I think they were trying to teach, is that yes, you can try to talk your way out of a situation, but you have to know your clientele. Like you have to think first before you talk. That's what I think the moral was.
I can understand that. That actually does make sense. I think what made it muddled was the delivery. That message isn't entirely brought across, and I think if they had been clearer on that, it would have been better.
I think it would have helped if they didn't have toth-ra just be a complete mindless zombie. Like if they had it so that Louis, took a page out of Webby's book and tried to act as, a humble servant, willing to serve toth-ra, and toth-ra actually, fed into it and said, okay, I command you to do this, or she'll prove to me your loyalty and do this. But no, instead he just mindlessly tries to attack him, regardless of what he says. Like I think that's where they lost it. Had they had him, have a bit of a personality and maybe try to, play up and have Louis kind of, use his skill to try to get them out of the situation, maybe it would have came across better. But it did come across as a little flat.
Yeah. And so now we should address how these plots intertwine. So the A plot, it really drags on for a little bit, where they're running away from the priest and they do all this and that. But before they had met up with the priest, they read these hieroglyphics on the wall. And they say, bad things will happen for those who cross toth-ra. And after rereading it, they realize, it's not crossing toth-ra, it's toth-ra crossing a certain point. So the priest, during this whole encounter, tries to chase them, and they pretty much have him cornered in one area. But then the army from the B plot come in through the front gate. So you have two sides to the people. And while they're distracted by the army, Louis does a whole bunch of stuff with the body to make the people think that he's really the mighty toth-ra, and try to, make the people worship him or make the people follow his orders. And the stilts that are holding toth-ra up fall down, and he crosses this threshold. So, alright, this first half of the episode, or 2/3 or whatever of the episode, I was kind of wondering if that was it. If that was just gonna be it, the twist that the priest was really behind toth-ra. And I was a little bit disappointed, I'm not gonna lie, because, there really wasn't a lot of meat to this episode. Even though there was burritos, there wasn't a lot of meat to this episode. And
It was a beanless burrito.
It was a veggie burrito.
And while I enjoyed the B plot somewhat, I was just like, it's an alright episode, I guess. But then, once toth-ra crosses the threshold, he comes back to life. And it becomes an episode about a mummy coming back to life. And this isn't just some ordinary mummy. This is toth-ra. And they built him up they said, oh my god, he has laser eyes and he'll come at you. He has scarab spies. You can't do this, you can't do that, because he'll take you down. And
I like how they don't actually confirm that he has those powers. They just assume because he's, all powerful. And then when he actually comes to life, he actually does have those things.
Yes.
It's like, well, I'll be damned.
Mm-hmm. And I think once toth-ra comes to life, this is when the episode actually really picks up, because you're like, oh crap, like there's something really, really cool going on. So I liked this point of the episode the most, mostly because this is the most of the episode that I felt, was more Halloween-ish. For the most part, this episode isn't really that much of a Halloween special, and granted, I don't know how much the network, took this and wanted it to be a special or whatever, but it aired the weekend of Halloween, and I'm just like, it doesn't feel, for the most part, like Halloween. Like, you have the Thriller reference, and you have the mummies coming in and doing their spook dance, and it doesn't do anything to toth-ra because he's all powerful. But, when you see toth-ra, he is intimidating and somewhat scary.
Yeah, like when you finally see him in action, it's like, wow, no wonder people are afraid of this thing. It's like, but damn, he was stupid with that spell, like locking himself up. It's like, you couldn't push your throne a few inches forward. You put yourself in stasis lock for thousands of years for no reason.
That's
man,
another.
You dumb man.
They don't even explain why he imprisoned himself, like why he entombed himself. Like, there's a lot of vagaries about why this happened, if someone did it to him or whatever. It almost seems like it's trying to continue something, but I don't think there ever was a story in the original series. But it feels like there's something missing here. It feels like there's some information that we should be privy to about why toth-ra is doing this. And, I mean, I know he's all powerful and this and that, but why is he imprisoned? And why is it a bad thing that he's coming back? Aside from the fact that he wants to conquer everything, I get it. But I think if they spent more of the episode building up toth-ra instead of trying to make a bait and switch, it would have been a little bit better. But when he's actually alive, like when toth-ra's actually around, this is when the episode is really good. And you have this giant battle against a mummy, and he uses all these powers, and he runs, and he chases down Louis because Louis has one of the artifacts, one of the things in his tomb. And Louis says, all right, he lays it down. He's like, I will be your servant if you just let me go free. And toth-ra's like, no, you die. And I'm like, oh, okay.
And nothing was learned.
Like, if it had changed a bit, if, like, the whole lesson was him, like, not trying to con his way out of every situation, this should have been the moment where toth-ra's like, okay, all right, I will stop terrorizing the village or whatever. You'll be my servant. And then Webby comes from behind or something like that, or like they formulate a plan, but they really have this anticlimax where all the people group together and roll him into a burrito and take him back over the threshold as their plan. And I have to say, I think this is all just really weak. Like, I feel like there's so much potential in these ideas here, but I feel like a lot of it isn't fully realized. Like, toth-ra himself is well designed, seems like a very intimidating, cool figure when he's on screen, and, he has his presence, but he has no personality. We don't know anything about him, and he just, he's defeated by a burrito.
Worst villain ever.
I don't know. Eric, what do you think about of Burrito Ra?
Burrito Ra. I feel like the more that we're talking about this, the more I realize, like, I feel like maybe the writers kind of wrote themselves into a corner with that third act, because like they go with the whole, oh, the mummy's not real, oh, toth-ra's not really alive, it's just the priest that was doing it the whole time. Like they went through that cliche, but like if they just stuck with that, then that would have come across as just as that. But when they actually brought Toth-ra back to life, it was like, okay, that's something. All right, they felt like they had to go in that direction because what else could they possibly do? It's like they already revealed the one twist, but now they feel like they need to throw in an even bigger twist in order to kind of compensate, to kind of make up for the other one, to kind of like, oh, that was a fake out, this is the real one. But it just kind of, it's like, all right, we kind of see that. But the whole Webby and Louis thing, I'm with you on Zen. I'm with you on that because I do feel like it was kind of, the message itself did come across kind of weak. Like, it was just kind of jumbled, like just kind of, to me, it just kind of sent a lot of mixed messages. So it's like, okay, you could talk your way out of it, but you were doing it, but you were also telling the truth. But like, it's kind of a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I think the best way to describe this episode is very mixed. Very much, it almost feels like the first draft of a script. And, obviously there's a lot of people who worked on this, a lot of people who wrote it, and who made this episode happen. But it feels like it needed more rewrites. It felt like there was something there, and they took two different ideas. One of it being that Toth-ra wasn't real and he wasn't really a mummy, and then the idea that Toth-ra was real and he would come back to life. And they couldn't make a full episode out of it, so it was scrunched into 2 episodes. That's what it feels like to me, because you have these two things that don't mesh well together. And the B-plot in general is fluff, but it's funny fluff, so I welcome it. I welcome that part. But the whole stuff with the, oh, Toth-ra's not real, I'm really Toth-ra, I'm the priest, blah, blah, blah. I was so bored. I'm sorry, but I felt like I was watching I felt like I was watching an episode of, My Little Pony where like nothing was going on. Like what's the best comparison? The episode where they have all the sidekicks together and nothing happens. Something like that, where you have an idea in place, but nothing happens for the majority of the episode in the A-plot. And I felt like there could have been much more intrigue. I felt like there could have been much more mystery. I felt like there wasn't enough traps. Like, you're in a pyramid, why aren't there any traps?
Yeah, it was suspiciously devoid of traps. By the way, it wasn't just me, but it seems like doesn't it seem like Dewey should have been the one with Webby in this episode?
Yeah.
This kind of seems more like an arc for him as opposed to Louis. It actually I was thinking the same thing with the internship of Mark Beeks. Like, it feels like Louis should have been in that role instead of Dewey, because in that one, they were saying like Dewey was getting by on being lazy, but it's like, no, that's Louis' thing. Louis gets by on being lazy. Whereas in this one, Louis getting himself into trouble without thinking through. It was like, no, that's Dewey's thing. Well, what's going on here? I thought we established that the 3 nephews have individual personalities. Why are we suddenly like lumping them together again and confusing them with each other? Like, what's going on?
And maybe this would be a good lead-in to the Terror of the Terraformians if it was written for those specific characters, because, remember the development with Webby in that episode, where Huey was having all those problems and stuff like that. Like, there's stuff that just comes out of nowhere, character development that just gets kind of jumbled in both this and Terror of the Terraformians. So I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like how it should be is Louis is the con man, Huey is the eager, scientific, always has a checklist type person, and Dewey runs headlong into danger. That's how it should be. Something is crossed in this episode and a little bit of the Mark Beeks episode and Terror of the Terrafermians. And unfortunately, I feel like this and Terrafermians was hurt quite a bit because of it. But I do want to take the time to say that the development with Lena, how she was much more, friends with Webby, it kind of makes a little bit more sense now because we've seen they've been on many different adventures. And if Terror of the Terrafermians aired when it was supposed to, then I think that would have been great because that part of the Lena development would have made sense.
The funny thing was I was rewatching the Mummy episode today, and guess what came on directly after it? The Terrafermian episode.
As it should have been. And
yes.
it makes me question a lot of this airing out of order. Like, why was Terror of the Terrafermians aired when it was supposed to be? Because did they only do it to push the Mummies of Toth-ra as the Halloween episode?
I think what it was that because when the Terrafermians aired, it was during, like, that whole Saturday morning, they were kind of doing that Halloween thing, like the beginning of October. So they kind of bumped. So to me, the Terror of the Terrafermians was the Halloween episode that they were pushing for, because they wanted to tie that in with all the other shows that were also airing their Halloween-ish episodes during that time. So the fact that they actually decided to air Mummies of Toth-ra around Halloween, around the actual Halloween, was because it was just like, oh, it's mummies, it ties in with Halloween, so they just kind of go with that, even though the Terror of the Terrafermians is kind of more, that was kind of more the Halloween episode because it had the characters themselves, trying to overcome some sort of fear, and Launchpad going crazy thinking everyone's mole people, but I think that's what happened. Like, it was more executives at Disney, just at Disney Television, just trying to block them into to promote it for Halloween during that block, because they were doing it for that one day with all of their shows.
Okay.
I really hope that when they come back in spring, because I assume that their new season starts in spring, that they don't do this shit again because, one of them happens to hold up an egg during an episode and they're like, ooh, an egg, we could use that for our Easter episode. I really hope they don't pull that shit again, or anything regarding the holiday shit, because I get it, you want to go with the theme and everything, but come on, don't fuck over the continuity of the show or the flow of the show just to fit your arbitrary theme. It's ridiculous. It really is.
I doubt it, because not a lot of shows do Easter episodes per se, simply because it's Easter. Oh, there's eggs and bunny rabbits, and
they might do St. Patrick's Day because they're Irish or Scottish or whatever.
Well, Scotch-Irish, I don't know.
I don't know. I just really hope they don't pull that shit again when they come back from the hiatus, because it's bad enough they're doing that with the Huey episode just because there's snow. Like, that is such a lame reason. And I don't see any
reason for them to do that unless they specifically have, like, unless they have, like, I don't know what, I can't really think of anything.
You watch, it's not even because it's winter. They probably end up going to the mountains or something, and the snow is probably from the mountaintops. It probably has nothing to do with winter whatsoever. I don't know.
Or it could be snowing in Duckburg, and they might be doing something like that. That's the only thing I could think of.
I don't know. I just think the marketing department dropped the ball here, because you said they did a whole block of Halloween episodes. What was to stop them from doing the Mummies of Toth-ra earlier on in the month, and then Terror of the Terrafermians immediately afterwards? They're both Halloween-ish episodes. You're still in the same month if you're going to do it, and if you're going to have it in a block, well, you just aired both of them. You can put them in a block. You don't need to rearrange the order. it's confusing. You have to, it makes it harder to do our job because we have to look back and see how we felt about the episode then, and then we have to take this new detail in mind and put out our new continuity and think about it all. And you guys at home might not think it's a lot of work, but trust me, a lot of it goes into, okay, what does this do for the series? What does this do for the episode? I'm always thinking when I'm watching, like, how these things affect each other, because I remind you, when we first started this podcast, I was very, very excited for this series because of the first 4 episodes were really, really good, were really good intrigue. The storyline started off such wonderful storyline. Like, I still think the show is great, but with this episode, the Mummies of Toth-ra and Terror of the Terraformians, we're seeing problems with story and writing. We're seeing problems with the marketing department on multiple levels, and it's affecting the quality of the show. And it makes me feel like, when we started, we don't have that same energy anymore. We don't have that same level of intrigue. And a lot of that is because of the way you structure and order the episodes, and that is the quickest way to piss me off. You have this gold mine. You have this money bin full of really good ideas to pick from. And granted, not every show has always, winning episodes. Not every episode is going to be a winner, but you threw it off and made Terror of the Terraformians a worse episode because of this shift. And if I were to watch both of them back to back and think about it, I might actually think that Terror of the Terraformians was better now because of the way it was supposed to be aired. And again, I don't know anything about this unannounced Huey episode with Snow. It could be that we missed something from way before that we just haven't been told. And this is everything to me. First impressions are a big indicator for me. You have this great start, but shows fizzle out. And I really hope it's not going to end up like that, because they're pulling a Nickelodeon. You know how Nickelodeon dicked around Avatar, The Legend of Korra. Well, it's starting to feel a lot like this with DuckTales, where they're just screwing around with it. They don't care about the story. They just say, oh, the kids will eat it up, so put it whenever, blah, 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 blah. I really hope they don't do that.
I don't think they will, because DuckTales does seem to be a big cash cow for them at the moment. I mean, hopefully they'll learn from this experience to actually air it in the proper order and not let holiday season dictate when they air certain things. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna go in the direction they went with Korra. They acknowledge that this is a good thing for them, and that they definitely should keep it and promote it. They just have to, figure out in terms of, keep airing it the way it's supposed to air and marketing the way it's supposed to be marketed. That's the only thing that they have to really work out.
Yeah. I'm sorry to be so negative, guys, because I do still really love the show, and when it's really good, it is really good. Like, there are a lot of really great points in Mummies of Toth-ra that happen with, like, the jokes and the burritos and stuff like that. But I honestly think that Toth-ra and Terraformians are 2 of the weaker episodes of the series. Granted, we've only seen 8 total episodes, but 6 fantastic episodes versus 2 episodes that are weak, not bad, but just okay. And that's getting to be a bigger ratio. I don't know how it's going to be going forward. I'm not saying this is an indicator of things to come. It's starting to make me cautious. When you have one episode can be a fluke, but two is starting to form a pattern, and if there's a third, that's somewhat weaker in my eyes, then I'm kind of getting cautious of the series. But again, we still have, 21 total episodes in this season to, flesh things out. So I'll reserve my judgment. I will be cautiously optimistic for the future, and I'm just gonna say that I really hope that one of the 3 plot threads comes back, or at least they do a filler episode that's a lot funnier. Like, this is funny, but the A plot just, I'm sorry, like this. There was a lot of portions I was just like, really?
But hey, at least they all got burritos in the end.
Yes, every single one. Every single person got a burrito. And you get a burrito. And you get a burrito. And Uncle Scrooge is going to pay for it.
It's like $9,000 for a burrito. This better be the best damn burrito I ever ate. Oh, you got lucky.
Anyway, guys, I'm sorry. I've been rambling on for a little bit because I don't know about you two, but I was not really a big fan of this episode. Kat, what are your final thoughts on the Mummies of Toth-ra?
Pretty much everything you guys said. It wasn't my favorite. I still like it a little bit more than Terror of the Terra Firmians. Not by much. I said the A plot wasn't that good. B plot was amusing. I said I feel like it was a whole big miscast with Louis. Like I said, it should have been Dewey in that role. I said Toth-ra I felt was a waste. He could have been a much better utilized bad guy, but they kind of muddled that whole thing at the end with him, and it just was, it was a filler. It was there. It exists. That's pretty much all I could say about it. It was okay. It's nothing special, and it was nice to see them, get back to form as like the original show, but I don't know. I kind of want to see them get back to more quality plots that I saw at the beginning of the series. That's just me.
And Master Eric, what are your final thoughts on the mummies of lots of burritos in my stomach?
Now you're getting me hungry. This was okay. I agree with Kat. I liked it a little better than the Terror of the Terra Firmians, but it's still. I like it. It is still a bit of an adventure episode, but it wasn't. But the episode itself wasn't really that stellar. I do like the thing with the burritos. I thought that was fun. Like Kat said, it was amusing, but it was just overall. I also agree with Kat that it should have been Dewey because I was also thinking that as well. It's like we saw him try to talk his way out with the infernal internship of Mark Beeks, and that should have been Dewey in that role, not Louis. But it was kind of odd. It was kind of oddly imbalanced between the A plots and the B plots, but. I think the burrito thing was kind of what kept me going, and then when they actually had Toth-ra actually doing stuff and shooting lasers from his eyes, that actually kind of helped it a bit. But overall, it was all right. But I wouldn't freak out so much because like you've said, Zen, we've had 6 great episodes. 6 out of 8 is not bad. So I don't think it's good. So, with any show, you're going to get a bad episode here and there. But, as long as the majority of the episodes are good, and so far they are, I think we'll be fine. And I don't think that they're going to, and I hope they don't air any more episodes out of order. I don't think they're going to do that. Once we get into the second half of the season, I think there's going to be a lot more consistency with it. I think, if anything, they're going to try to re-air all the episodes, but I think what we should do before after the Huey Snow episode, what we should do is we should go back again, do a special episode where we watch it in order to see if it makes sense, if the order of the episodes actually change our opinions on how the episodes are, just because they're written the way they're supposed to be written, they're aired they're supposed to be aired. So I'm thinking maybe we could do that before the second half of the season airs.
I think we can do that. I think that's a good idea. Again, I'm not saying that this is the end of the world for the show. 6 fantastic episodes is still much more than I can say for some other shows that I've seen. And 2 okay. Like I am going to continue to watch the show, and we're going to continue to do our podcast on the show because this is fun, and I've been enjoying the show so far. So things are going to keep on going. I had been going into the show with a lot more optimism than I am right now. I have caution in front of me. Like, instead of having the train signal flashing green, I have like a bunch of caution tape everywhere. So I mean, I don't want to be negative, and I'm not really a negative person, but a lot of the stuff that has been happening with this out of order episodes has really been kind of ticking me off. And here's the thing. The executives who drive this show are not the creators of the show. And it always upsets me when somebody who doesn't work on a project dicks around with it and says, no, I want it like this. I want it like this. A lot of what's going on with the gaming industry right now, where they'll put very talented people on a project, and then they'll be like, they'll cancel it halfway through, or they'll do this and that, and that always ticks me off because the creators have a vision for a reason. They do things in a certain way for a reason, and I don't think something like Gravity Falls would have the same impact if it had been dicked around in the same way. So that's why I'm being ticked off right now, and I apologize if my negativity upsets anyone who's listening to this out there. I still like the show, and I still liked the first 6 episodes. It's just that a lot of the stuff that's been happening recently has been making me angry, and I apologize if that upsets you.
I'm not. Seriously, executives, get your asses in line. Let the creators do their things. Stop pissing us off.
Yeah.
Let the show run its course.
People need to understand that, editors are not writers, executives are not creators, publishers are not game designers. When did the industry become so ass backwards that the people who are just funding a project rather than creating it are making creative decisions? I don't get this. Anyway, with all of that said, I am angry. Zenith will rule.
I am pissed off. Kat Macberrie.
I am just cool as a cucumber. Eric Y2 Staller, who's trying to keep these other 2 sane.
And we will see you guys next time for more DuckTales shenanigans. In the future, we don't know when the new episodes will air. It's definitely not going to be in November because they want to do this Christmas stuff. So it most likely will be in a month or so, and then I'm not sure when the new episodes will air from there. So essentially, we're going to be taking a few weeks off for break, much like the show, because our episodes are dictated by when the official episodes come out. But we will return when the show does.
In the meantime, watch the Disney debate for more Disney goodness.
Yes, we will be continuing on with our Disney debate podcast as we talk about Toby Tyler and a monkey with a gun. Yes, this really happens. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys next time. And as always, just remember, if you're watching this and you're a CEO or an executive and you have to make all these decisions, but you don't have any knowledge about the creative process, maybe let the creative team make the goddamn decisions. Okay?
And don't take down our podcast out of revenge because you're pissed off at us. Because that's not cool, dude. Anyways, TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.